Good day and welcome to the Point 99 podcast, season 2, episode 5. And in the immortal words of Bon Jovi, whoa, we're halfway there. I wasn't going to do that. I was going to copy in some audio soundbite, but I also knew that if I didn't do it, the likes of Mike and Patrick would be on my back, calling me a chicken and all sorts. So there you go. Little bit of singing. I hope that makes your day. For new listeners, the Point 99 podcast is a running podcast by runners for runners. If you're new to running, we hope to have topics and discussions that will help you along whatever path your journey is taking. Or, for any seasoned runners, maybe some stories that will have you empathizing with our experiences. Whether it's lessons we've learned during our own journeys, embarrassing stories, or heartstring pulling moments, we hope you'll stick with us while we try share some good vibes, motivation, and positivity. And hopefully we can all have a laugh along the way. Usually, at this point, I'd give you a rundown of my running week since the last episode. But as some of you may remember, I've had a 0 mileage week this week. Thankfully, the biopsy didn't hurt too much, a few pain twinges at the beginning of the week, but healing well and ready to get the stitches out later today, then back out training. Certainly, I'll be taking it easy for a few days before upping the tempo once again to get back on the Amsterdam Marathon preparation train. Thank you to all the legends who dropped me messages of well-wishing. I really wasn't looking for any attention, but more to encourage everybody to make sure that they're getting checked for any concerns or doubts that they may have with their physical or mental health. But they are always appreciated. Likewise, there weren't really many events popping up on my feed to shout out this week, but there were a couple. The Press Play and Run crew had what looked like a fantastic day covering all the volunteer spots at the Strathclyde Park Parkrun on Saturday. So a massive congratulations to all involved for being superstars. Parkrun, of course, would not be possible without people volunteering their time. I also got along to Parkrun as a volunteer, undertaking the extremely important halfway turning point cone roll at Alness, down at the end of the pier. The roll sees the marshal dressed as an actual cone and mascot for the event. A few selfies from the runners along the way and some absolutely fantastic banter. But seeing that I was also one of the 2 photographers on the course that morning, I was the camera cone. Check out my reels for a little bit more on what I looked like, but also some of the photos that I took from the day. As to be expected now, there was also an outing by 3 of the dibberiest dibbers at the Northumberlandia 10K. Giz, Nick and Elodie looked to have had a ball. A special nod to Nick for smashing out a whopping 5 10 kilometres in one day, 4 ahead of the Northumberlandia on Saturday, finishing July super strong. Nick was certainly getting himself in the mood for the Loch Ness 24 with the rest of the dibbers as it gets ever closer as every week goes by. Otherwise, that's about it. There, as always, is a little bit of background discussion going on behind the scenes for merchandise and the 99 Club. A handful of the inner council of listeners have had a sneak peek at one collaboration that is currently in the works, but I can't make an announcement officially just yet until the deal is finalised. It's safe to say, however, that it's going to finally open up the ability for online ordering for listeners all around the world. I'm honestly super pleased with the design I've come up with for the item in question. Sadly, it's not a buff. That won't be flying off the shelves just yet and will have to be revisited at a later date. So anyone who already has an early model really has a rare piece. More on all of that in due course, however. I'll be making an announcement hopefully in the coming week, but watch this space. I would say, all going well with the collaboration, it may open up the opportunity for more products, more designs, and a lot of fun. So, on to the guest for this episode. In a change to the originally announced guest, Craig Winter from Runr, I'll now be joined by my very good friend and recent training partner, Chris. Unfortunately, due to a scheduling issue, Craig was unable to make tonight's recording, which had already been rescheduled from an earlier date due to an issue at my end. As the recording was going to be very last minute anyway, I did toy with the idea of cancelling and resuming on the 11th. However, Chris has come to my rescue. In fact, it will be great to have someone who doesn't do Instagram or have any external influence from a running perspective joining me, other than, of course, my input. Hopefully, if Chris remains the Chris I've grown up with over the past 20 years, he was also one of my groomsmen, I expect he will give me an extremely honest take on how the training block went for him, his feelings towards training, and how each week felt, and ultimately how he's doing coming off the back of his, now spoiler, successful completion of the program that I wrote up for him. Thank you also to Emily for the offer to come and chat with me tangentially. I may come back to you on that one in the future if I find myself in the same predicament. But with that, let's get into the chat. My guest today has been one of my best pals for a very long time, over 20 years in fact. He has seen me at my very best and on the flip side, my very worst. But we won't be talking about any of that today. Having recently made a commitment to driving personal change, dropping a few dress sizes and getting a good base level of fitness in ahead of a tropical holiday this time next year, he is focused on getting it done. And I offered to team up with him and help him kick off his fitness journey. With a stalled effort with running late last year, Garmin coach at his best is all I'm going to say. I focused on taking the time to write a custom program that worked for him in a requested 8-week block. But with an initial plan of 8 weeks to get from 0 to 30 minutes of uninterrupted running under his belt, he pushed that little bit further come the final week and smashed 0 to 5K in just 8 weeks, with the standard couch to 5K program being 10 weeks. So let's get chatting with my good friend and fellow nerd, Chris Murphy, or as he's got on Zoom, mostly Chris. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going good. It's going good.
You had a good week.
Yeah, it's not been too bad. It's been a bit hectic, but yeah, not too bad, all things considered.
Good.
What about yourself?
Yeah, not bad. No running. Just had stitches out of the biopsy hole.
Yeah.
So it feels good to finally have that out, but it means I can get out running again. But I just have to be very careful. So short distances and keep an eye on it. But no, good. Glad it's Friday tomorrow. And glad to have someone to fill the void that was created with the scheduling error. So thank you very much for stepping up and saving my bacon.
It's no problem at all. I thought you were still talking about the hole for a second there.
Not quite. I know there's a couple of people who I know will be listening, will be very excited to hear from you specifically. Susan and Chris, another Chris, runs a lap. For anyone that doesn't know, Chris runs a lap from the Edinburgh Runners. He wanted to steal this Chris and have a competing podcast against the original Steve duo from season 1. But so far that hasn't materialized. But once he hears him on here, he might try and make that a reality.
Could be a hot commodity.
Solo Steve, but duo Chris.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm going to jump straight into it though, because I know Chris will be itching to get on some game or other. So I know I am as well. I don't normally do anything on a Thursday night. So this is a new one. I don't have to edit normally. So we'll jump into the questions. And I think most importantly, because I know you, I could like wax lyrical about you, but so it's coming from the man himself. Can you introduce yourself, give a little bit of history with how you got on with sport over the years, and also what you're looking to achieve from your new found interest in, I suppose, running. As I say, I know a lot about you, but the listeners won't. Um, I will tag in bits and pieces as well, but if you could also say a little bit about that, as I said in the intro, the
Mhm.
stall from last year and why your first introduction didn't really work.
Yeah, so I mean, there's not really much to say. It's I won't be able to lie either or exaggerate
Yeah,
because you know
exactly.
me. So no, I mean back in school and things like that. Certainly, didn't have any issues fitness wise or anything back then. But as with most things, when you leave school, things change, and I got a job working in an office, and you know the office fitness isn't quite the same as normal fitness. And yeah, after working in an office environment for the whole of your adult life, if you don't make an effort to stay fit, then guess what? You don't. So yeah, the first round there with the Garmin coach, I sort of decided that I was a bit fed up with things and wanted it to change. And went and got the watch and everything, the Forerunner watch and everything, and decided to make a go of it. And in hindsight, I probably could have pushed through with it, but the training was very or at least the suggested workouts and everything were a bit all over the place, and a lot of it was very high intensity,
Mm-hmm.
very in your face, and it was always asking you to push as hard as you could. It didn't try and ease you into it or anything like that. It was almost it was almost treating me like somebody that had been running for a period of time already.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, your body's just not used to that. So I kind of bounced off it a bit. And again, in hindsight, I could have pushed through, but with everything else going on in life, it didn't make it very easy to stick with it, especially when you're doing it on your own. I think that's one of the things we've discovered that we'll probably touch on a little bit later. But having somebody else there with you certainly helps. And so yeah, it was kind of feels like in hindsight that it was destined to fail. So yeah, that's where I came from, and it's much better now thanks to your good self.
I mean, as I said, because I've known you for so long, for context, when Chris says when we were at school, we've known each other over 20 years.
Yeah, yeah,
I've worked with my current job and since I left the school for 19 years now. It was 19 years this year, 19 full years.
yeah,
So that kind of shows how long ago we were in school together. So I think it's about 20, 22, 23 years since Chris moved up because he's, as I
yeah.
said before I pressed record, Chris is more Scottish than I am. He sounds more Scottish than I do.
Yeah, I moved to this area in 1999, just
Yeah,
before the millennium. Um, so yeah, that's about right. Yeah,
that's
23
about right. Yeah,
years.
about
I'll
23
be that
years.
old now.
I know. But in school, you did a little bit more social activity sports wise. You played football with the
Yeah.
boys and kind of kind of got stuck in that side, whereas I didn't so much until more the later side of before we left. I focused more on athletics and dabbled in that side of things, but
Mm.
um, yeah, I suppose you in a roundabout way you kind of hit the nail on the head, didn't you? You did what so many what happened to you happens to so many people when you leave school that jobs take over and fitness kind of goes out the window. So you go from having some level of activity to effectively none other than walking to work or uh, yeah, probably walking to work for you.
Yeah, and if you don't make a conscious effort to do it, then it never
Yeah,
gets done, right? And more and more with the world that we're in as well. Even between like some me and yourself, it's obvious. We don't go out and do things as often as we did, and that'll partially be because we're older and we've got our own lives and partners and everything else going on, but also just because of the way things are as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And for context for anyone listening, and where I've already said that Chris will be looking forward to playing some game or other, and I'm the same. We do we are a form of athletes. We just do electronic sports. We're esports, not esports stars, but yeah, we're both gamers, and I think it would be a lie to say that it doesn't drive a lot of what both myself and Chris do
mm-hmm.
in our free time. And for my personal take, I don't think I mentioned it in the past, and when Steve was interviewing me, but that was what a conscious step for myself as well. As I spent a lot of time looking at a computer screen throughout the day for
Yeah.
work and then at night, and it's not the healthiest sitting in a chair all day. And like, yeah, you kind of hit the nails well and said, well, you've looked at it, you decided you need to make a change, and uh, with your big holiday coming up next year, it's the perfect thing to aim towards to drop a little bit, drop a few pounds, drop a little bit of weight, and have that goal to work towards. Because then at least there's a goal to work towards. It's not just doing it, suppose like I am, just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
it was kind of two birds with one stone, right? I should be doing it anyway, but also um, in doing that, I'll get more enjoyment out of the holiday itself, and
you'd be less conscious of
maybe
body
even
image and
might
things. Yeah.
yeah maybe even might be able to do a bit of running or something while I'm there, right? So
I know where you're going because it's the same place that we went this year. I went
yeah.
with my partner for listeners, and I struggled to run there. I had 3 runs. No offense, Chris, you ain't running there.
I might surprise you yet.
Oh, you probably will know me because you'll get it in your head now. Right, let's move then to the program. And yeah, you struggled with the Garmin because, like I think from seeing that, it was too intense. It was too much too soon with Garmin Coach.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely felt that way.
So we had a discussion early on in the year, but it took a while to kind of come to fruition. And I said, well, look, I'm coming up to a new training block for, I think it was Edinburgh at the time. It'll be good to help me back into more structured running. I'll write a program for you. I'll come out with you and give you that accountability, because then you've got someone that's relying on you to be there at that time.
Mhm.
So we're going to cover a little bit of the program that I wrote for Chris, and then he's going to give honest opinion on how he felt coming into it week by week. So it was interval sessions 3 times a week. So we did Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for the most part. There were a few variations there, either to work around Chris's schedule or mine.
Mhm.
But for the most part, week 1 and 2 were fairly straightforward. We did every, I think for every week actually, we did a 5 minute walk up, warm up, brisk walk. Stumbling all over my words there. And then it was a pyramidal easy run approach, wasn't it? So we started with 7 minutes. So yeah, it was 7 minutes. So 7 times 1 minute easy pace with 3 minutes walking, and then finished off with a nice brisk pace walk to kind of cool you down. And
Yeah.
week 2, it went to 6 easy pace for 2 minutes. Week 3 was 5 easy pace for 3 minutes, and the structure went that way. It was same as a pyramid. We reduced the amount of time that you would be walking and increased the amount of time that you'd be running, and also lessened the number of reps that you were doing. So
Yeah,
going
that's it.
into week 1, how did you feel?
I was looking forward to it, to be honest. I wasn't really super anxious or nervous about it. And it's only 1 minute, and as even as out of shape as I was like, how hard can it be? It's only 1 minute. It's only a minute. And then, the fifth minute into it, you're like, okay, yeah, this is a
Yeah.
minute's a really long time. It's not really now, but back then that's what was going through my head at least. But no, and on the approach to week one, I was eager for it because I knew that um, we would have to begin somewhere, and it was always going to be tough. Coming from the complete lack of fitness that I had had up to that point. And I think it was one of the things I commented on as we were doing it as well, is that, even if I had started that um, slightly sooner, like 2, 3 years earlier, it would have been much easier to get going.
Yeah.
But the last few years in particular, yeah, it just made that initial starting point even harder than it really should have been. But I was still looking forward to getting through it and getting the ball rolling with things.
Yeah, I think week one, especially because it was the introduction, it wasn't so much the Monday or the Friday, was it? It was the Wednesday that really got you, because at least with
Yeah,
the
that's right.
Friday, you pushed that little bit harder because you knew you had a couple of days off to recover. The
Mm-hmm.
Monday, it was because it was fresh. And then the Wednesday, that was the day that really got you. On most weeks, that was the day that really got you, where your heart rate just really built quite high. And then you struggles with your breathing for the first few weeks.
Yeah, yeah, it was really tough to yeah, just keep everything controlled. I can't remember, I can't recall now if it was the first week on the Wednesday or the second week on the Wednesday. Um, but yeah, that I remember that being
I think
probably the
that was
hardest it's
second
been
week.
so far. Yeah,
Yes, I think that was not. I think that was week two. So week two was 6 reps at two and brisk walk for two. Um, and again, Monday, as with most weeks, your PB, you got a PB in every week, either on the Monday or the Friday, because like I say, it was fresh on the Monday, and it was seeing the back of it on the Friday. But the
yeah,
Wednesday, the 10th, it was Wednesday the 10th of May. Yeah, Wednesday,
yep.
10th of
It was
May.
me. Yeah,
That was the real struggle for you. I remember because you'd said it, you could feel it. You could feel your heart in the back of your throat. And you had a
yeah,
metallic
yeah.
taste.
Yeah, and it
It's never
was the
good.
whole, the whole feels like it's burning kind of thing going on as well. And it was like, yeah, it was just really, it felt almost out of control. And yeah, it was just, I think that's probably the low point for the whole thing, looking back on it. But even then, thinking about how bad it felt at the time, it's, still definitely no regrets or anything else. If I come up against another day where the run felt that bad, then I know that I can see through to the other side and look back later on and feel good about it.
So let's get some honesty here. If I hadn't been running with you at all for any of the 8 weeks, and you'd managed to do the first week because it was 7 reps of 1 minute with 3 minutes in between, nothing too strenuous. Then week two, you're feeling that on Wednesday, and you maybe get to Friday and think, you know what, sod this. Would you have continued if I wasn't there? Do you think?
On that Wednesday, I probably would have stopped for sure before we did actually stop. I think that I probably would have kept going, but it probably wouldn't have been as earnest an effort as it
Mm.
ended up being. Um, which is weird because I never thought that would be the case. I always thought that I would be able to keep myself accountable. It's something we've kind of touched on and off during the runs is um, how much easier it is having somebody else there, and I think it really is. I didn't expect it to be for me, but it definitely is.
I think for most people listening, they come from an Instagram sporting background, so they have that level of accountability. They have people that they'll post they're going for a run, and then they feel
Hmm.
accountable if they come back and it's not been necessarily as good a run as they were hoping for, and every run successful, no matter if you
Yeah,
slow down or whether you stop. Every run is successful, but yeah, if you for you not using social media, and if you didn't have me keeping you accountable, I don't think this is mean to say. I don't think you would have got past week two. I
probably
think it
not. I
would have been like
mean,
Garmin again. I think that would have been a bit too much at the straw that broke the camel's back.
I feel like it would have ended up one of two ways. It probably yeah, like that. I probably would have just stopped. Because again, it's something else we touched on as well. It's one of those things where if there's other things happening in life or whatever, it's easy for you to make that run that you were planning to go on, just take a back seat and do something else instead.
Yeah.
And that would have either happened or else the run itself would have been compromised in some way. Like I would have I would have broke out from the structure that I had set up, to do 2 minutes at this pace or that pace,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
ended the run early or this, that, or the next thing, and it wouldn't have been as complete and successful as it ended up
you
being.
you wouldn't have been as honest to yourself, really. And I
Yeah,
think we did vary. I'd say that we did vary the program, but we did vary day to day as well, because there's you never know what's going to happen in your work day. Sometimes a meeting overruns, or you've got a busy schedule and you think, I've got to get this finished off before I go out for a
yeah,
run. So we maybe changed it by a couple of hours each time to work with that. But I don't think there was any point that you called off a day. There may have been one you'd asked to change a day, but no point. I don't think he, because I was going down and coming down and meeting you. I don't think you said, you know what, I can't be bothered today. It's just too hard.
hmm.
There were
Yeah, it
mid runs where you said that, and I made
was.
you run.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, there was quite a few days where it's like this is really unpleasant. I'm not really enjoying this. It hurts. It's difficult. It's tough. And I'm only maybe like a quarter of the way into the whole session.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm thinking, and I've got that niggle in the back of my head that's like, can you actually do this? Am I going to be able to do this? Um,
We'll,
and
we'll
yeah,
jump forward to week 5 then, because week 5 and week 6, I think, were probably more. I would have said they were more make or break for you, but week 2
yeah,
certainly was a tough one. Week 5, we did 3 easy paced 8 minutes with a
mhm,
brisk walk for one, and I actually think that might have changed. I think we made because I was there with you. I think we might have changed that to 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes of walking, because it was very warm when we were doing this. May was very warm.
yeah,
And week 6 was 3 easy pace 12 minutes with a brisk walk for 1 minute. But again, I think that might have increased to 2 or 3 minutes. And as you would expect, there was a particular day or particular days I would count down how long was left. I would tell Chris, don't look at your watch. I'll
mhm.
keep an eye on that. And I'd said, I think we'd done the first 12 minutes, and I said, well, that's the minute up. And you're like, really? I mean, it feels like 10 seconds have gone by and you
Yeah,
didn't want to run again. Um, but given that was week, let's say that was week, yeah, that was week 6. So the full
yeah,
program that week, you had been running for an hour or an hour and 3 minutes. Whereas the week before, you were running for 37 minutes to 40 minutes. The week before
yeah.
that, it was 36 to 38. So that was probably the biggest jump up week 6. And I do remember it was very, very warm. That was a week that I took water, but again, the heat had warmed the water up, so you didn't even get a cold drink. It was
Tepid.
tepid.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Again, at that point that you were 6 weeks in, did that did that make you think, am I doing the right thing here? Or by that point, were you quite comfortable knowing that I wasn't trying to kill you and it was all for the betterment?
I still don't know. No, no, it was no. I felt good about it. I felt good about it. I had, I definitely think that first week and the second week was, how I felt doing those runs was really quite dreadful compared to what the fifth and sixth and onward weeks felt. So even though we were racking up a lot longer time running, um, it didn't it didn't really feel as hard as what I had to deal with earlier on in the program.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, and I remember thinking a lot about how um, not so much the walks in between, but yeah, like you said, the actual amount of running and the length of it was increasing quite significantly. You're talking about adding 25, 30, maybe even 50% time onto the amount of time that you're spending running for the whole day's session. And there was always this worry in the back of my head that that's quite a significant increase. Is that sustainable?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it is. It is. I know that now, and I kind of knew that at the time because it just kind of has to be, or else you're never going to get there. But I was always worried. There was always this niggle in the back of my head that I wouldn't be able to do it, and we would end up having to, make some major modifications to the 8 week plan to try and accommodate um, my actual capability and how I was doing it. So I'm really glad that it ended up being quite good. I feel like in particular from the 5th and the 6th week, that was when really things started to smooth out.
Yeah.
And I started to have less issues with like my breathing and keeping the heart rate slightly lower. I wouldn't say low,
It was
but
more of a
lower.
steady increase rather than like a Mount Everest of a peak.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. That I think that was one of the things that made the first few weeks so difficult, is because it, any amount of running was enough to make my heart rate super high.
Yeah, spike.
And so, even though it was only for a minute, yeah, you're going from quite gentle, brisk walk where, high heart rate, high-ish heart rate, sure. But yeah, that 1 minute effort would peak it really high and then it would come crashing back down. And after cycling that a few times, yeah, it's just super exhausting. Whereas the later runs, it was just more about finding a pace that was comfortable. And I think it was probably around the 5th and 6th week that started to notice that, well, I can achieve this sort of pace and do it for quite a prolonged period of time without it really getting to me and breaking me down. And then we were able to build on that for the last 2 weeks.
Well, that's the last 2 weeks very much got to the point where you weren't looking you were still looking at your watch for most of the weeks, but by that point you were comfortable with a natural pace. There you wouldn't have necessarily needed a watch. You knew what your pace was
Mm-hmm.
going to be. You could naturally run it. But week 7 was probably, I would say, even for me, it was one of the toughest weeks. So that was like, I'm sure that was the hottest week, and it was 3 easy pace runs at 15 minutes with a brisk walk of 1 minute. And again, I think it was a 2 minute walk in the end because of the weather aspect.
Yeah, it was pretty
Um,
oppressively hot and humid
yeah,
at the
because
end
that
of the night.
was that on the flip side of Edinburgh? Certainly, if anyone that knows how Edinburgh went knows how hot it was around about that time. But there was one particular day, so you learned to control your breathing, the whole in through your nose, out through your mouth, because to begin with, it was a lot of gulping of air for the first
Yeah.
few weeks. Then you controlled your breathing, controlled your heart rate. We pushed you quite hard on week 7 because
Mm-hmm.
that was 45 minutes of running to then your final week was going to be un, an unbroken 30-minute run. So to do
Mm-hmm.
45 minutes worth of time with very little in between. I remember that being very warm. I remember having to push you that last little bit in behind the distillery. That was the week we went in behind the distillery for the final time, because the first time you just
Yeah.
didn't like it. You really didn't want to do that part. Um, but then to go into week 8, we only did one run in week 8
Yeah,
from
that's right.
memory.
We ended up only doing one.
We only
Yeah.
did one, and we did it on the Wednesday. And at this point, I didn't have to tell Chris what the plan was. Well, I did tell him what the plan was. I said, the plan is to run for 30 minutes, and we'll see how you feel." And like I say, he'd been getting PBs every week. Every week he was getting better and better. Sometimes to his own detriment, he was leading the pace a little bit faster, and I'd had to draw him back.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
at the beginning, it was my issue. I was sometimes leading him a bit too quick because we hadn't learned what the acceptable pace was for him.
Yeah.
But
What would be
come
comfortable.
week 8, you asked the question. We got about 5 minutes in, and you said, "I would like to do 5K if possible."
Yeah.
You'd already
Just
made
keep
that
going.
decision, hadn't you?
Yeah, it was well. I was playing through what we had done for the last few weeks in my head, and I was thinking to myself, well, I just ran 45 minutes for 3 sessions last week. And yeah, there was a brisk walk in between every 15 minutes. But when you look back on that and you think about it, it is 45 minutes still. And if I'm able to do it for 45 minutes with a 1 minute walk, which seemingly turns into 10 seconds when you're actually doing it, then 30 minutes should be fine as long as I get past like the first 5-10 minutes and I'm not feeling like I'm really struggling. Then there shouldn't be really any reason why I couldn't, first of all, do the whole 30 minutes. But yeah, unless I was really, really, really struggling, seriously struggling at the end of the 30 minutes, there's, yeah, might as well just keep going. Might as well just keep going, get the 5K done, however long it takes me. And then, that can be a real success.
And that's exactly what happened though, because come 30 minutes, you were cruising.
Yeah.
I remember the route that we took, and you were cruising. So I had said I wouldn't let you do it if I didn't think you were comfortable. So at that
Hmm.
point, we said, well, okay, let's push that a little bit further. Let's push for the. I think we are around about 4K or just shy of 4K. So okay, let's push that final
Yeah.
K. And even when we got to 5K, you're that point. I think you may have spiked your heart rate, and it was getting tough because we'd come into an area that didn't have any tree cover. There wasn't any shade, and it was a warm day
Yeah, they
again.
were exposed. Yeah, and it was
And
still sunny. So yeah.
I think if we didn't have that, you probably could have gone further than 5K again. But certainly at the end of the program, the initial program being run for 30 minutes and uninterrupted, you cruised that. And it was the most comfortable I'd seen you any week leading up to it. Even just running for, I say just running for 12 minutes, but for someone with a relatively early form of fitness,
Mhm.
it's still it's massive obstacles to overcome. But then to run for 30 minutes and cruise it after the weeks that you've had previous, it was a massive success. And you did so well. And I think every week I would come in at the end of the week and I would say to Joe, you've smashed it this week again. You've done
Yeah.
amazingly well. But to run for 5K, like I said at the beginning, given that a standard couch to 5K program is 10 weeks, it's not to say that 10 weeks isn't actually better because you're not having to push harder weeks of running
Yeah.
3 times at 15 minutes. We could have broken that down a little bit more and eased you into it. But certainly, I think that was the week 5 and 6 really changed your mindset on what you wanted to achieve. And I think come week 7, you had it in your head, although you didn't ask me at that point if we could do 5K. You had it in your head that you wanted to push that goal, didn't you?
Yeah, and I remember you telling me at the time, on more than one occasion, it's one of those things where um, the further you run or the longer you run, the easier it is to go even further.
Yeah.
And it definitely felt like that at that point. And on the last week to do the whole 30 minutes, I knew I knew certainly by the time we had clocked up the 30 minutes, yeah, I could stop and I would have completed the run for the week, and we could have went on and done more afterward. But I wouldn't have been happy with that because I would have went home, I would have cooled down and sat down at the computer, or got some dinner or whatever the plan was for the rest of the evening, and I would have sat there full well knowing that I could have done another 10-15 minutes, and I didn't,
Yeah.
um, for no good reason. And I would have been annoyed at myself. So I was really glad that I stuck the extra 15 minutes in there to finish out the 5K. Um, and yeah, and I think I think you're quite right as well. That was the first week, really, that last run there on the eighth week, where yeah, for the whole run, I didn't even really feel like complaining or anything. There was always maybe not for week 7 and week 6 as well, but I always remember sort of most of the way there, at least there was always niggles with like my feet were sore, or the muscles in my legs were sore, and it was different places every week almost, but there was always something that was making the run extra unpleasant. And I remember on that run in particular, um everything just felt fine. Nothing felt achy, nothing felt sore. I didn't get sore while I was running. I wasn't running out of breath. The heart rate was still staying pretty low as well, relatively low. And yeah, everything just seemed to fall into place. And I definitely wouldn't have I definitely wouldn't have been able to do that 8 weeks into any program if I had been doing it on my own. So thank you again for that.
Oh no, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It was nice. It was. I can see why people coach because of the
Mm,
level of improvement you see in someone, and it gives you a kind of self satisfaction that you've helped someone achieve something that they may not have thought possible before, unless you're
mhm.
really like a driven person that's gonna like. I know that you are driven in a lot of aspects of your life, and you would definitely be driven to like without my help push that on your own. But I think there's aspects of people being driven. There's people who drive. They've had an accident. Let's say, for example, they've had an accident. They've broken their legs or something, and then they're like, "I'm going to run a marathon in 5 months' time," and they're
Mhm.
they're super driven in that respect. I think you could have done it, but I think because you had someone there to keep you accountable, it helped a lot more. And if anything, it helped me a lot as well because at the time I'd hurt the knee. Well, we thought it was the knee and it ended up being the calf. So it helped me to slow
Yeah.
things down. And I think I appreciated that a lot more as well, that sometimes you have to slow down. Not every run has to be a PB. You don't have to try and push yourself to breaking point every run.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that was something you said to me during one of the runs as well. It was almost like you were rediscovering the that it was okay to run a bit slower and be okay with it. Because you were so used to not necessarily pushing super hard all the time, but it's
yeah,
yeah, and I feel that as well. It's a bit weird, even though it's only 8 weeks, but I feel that as well. And when you're starting the run and you've got a kind of pace in mind for or at least in the position I'm in anyway, I have a kind of pace in mind for what I can do without getting myself tired too quickly. And that pace feels really awkward to do at first. It almost feels like I'm running in such a way that if people were watching me, they would be wondering what it is that I'm doing because I'm not quite running and I'm not quite walking.
yeah. It's like a speed walk. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I can imagine you feel the same, but you know, probably even to a bigger degree because it's such a the difference in pace from what you would normally be doing to what we were doing is quite large.
Yeah.
So I can imagine for you, yeah, it was a bit of a
But that
having
was one
to.
of your comments towards the end. I think I'd just broken my 5K PB, hadn't I? And that park run, and it was like the next week you're like, that's crazy that you've just run that, where that's effectively your times were, if not double, a little bit more than double what
Yeah,
I
not
was
far
doing.
off.
And it goes like I was at your point. I was where you were at one point in time. Everyone was, unless you're a gifted athlete, everyone's going to be at a far off distant point before they get to where they are now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and certainly, I could be a whole lot better with my running when I have someone. Let's say it's not necessarily as far in advance of runners than I was than you were at the beginning of your journey. But let's say someone's that's a fair bit faster than me is running with me. I'm going to push myself because they're going to push me. And the same with
Yeah.
you, maybe pushed yourself a little bit more throughout that program because I was there to push you on. Um, so no, it does. It helped me as much as it helped you.
Mm-hmm.
So no, it was really good, and I have since written another program for someone else, and so far it's going well for them as well. Luckily,
Mm-hmm.
though, they have another avenue to another voice giving them um, slightly different advice, but it's benefiting them because they're getting the original program and then hearing from someone else that that is the correct program, but you may want to do this as well, and it's benefiting
Mm-hmm.
them. So that's the main thing. But we'll move on to what's happened since we finished. So you did do a couple of runs since, a couple of 5K since, one
Yeah.
with me and one without, I think it was, or two
Yep.
without.
Yeah. Two
Um,
without, and then one with you. And I've not done anything the last few weeks, in
yeah, I was going
fairness.
to cover that because I have been, I do drop hints to and little notes, passive aggressive notes to Chris on Discord.
Yeah. I think the last one was 21 days. Naughty, naughty.
That's exactly it. I was gonna cover that. So you did have the incentive to continue without me because I think I was down in Glasgow or I was away,
Hmm.
and you did run, and I do check. If you told me you were going for a run, I would check like a
Yeah.
like a parent checking on you. Be like, have they done what they're meant to be doing? Have they done their homework? A teacher checking. Um, and you did two runs, and then I ran with you, and every run you PB'd in. Um, I think our run, it wasn't a massive PB, and you thought you hadn't. You thought the run before was felt a lot faster, but in reality, you pushed a little bit more when you had someone with you. And I think that's always going to be the case. You're going to push yourself a little bit more because there's someone there. Same
Hmm.
with how Elodie was at Edinburgh when it came to that last kilometre, what in reality was a kilometre and a half. She pushed because I told her to push, whereas she might not
Yeah.
have done it without me. She probably would have done, but she might not have done it without me.
Yeah.
Um,
I found that really weird because I never pictured myself as really benefiting much from having somebody else there with me. But prove myself wrong.
it is a good distraction. To have
Yeah.
someone there with you is a distraction because you're then not thinking about you could be thinking you're flying along and then in reality you're not. Whereas if someone's distracting you, you're probably going faster than you think.
Yeah.
But you've already mentioned there. I think the last message was 21 days naughty naughty, and then it followed up
Yeah.
with you'll start losing fitness after 10 days. Might want to repeat some of the program.
Yeah, I wouldn't be against that, and yeah, it has been longer than I'd like it to be. I think that's something else that helped with having you taking part in a lot of the runs as well, is that it means that I need to make a point of saying, okay, well, on this day at roughly this time, I am doing this thing, and it's like it's definitive, it's happening. Whereas if I'm planning to do it on my own, then if something else comes up or something like that, it's a lot easier to sideline it.
Yeah.
So that's probably what I need to get better at now because I do have, as we've mentioned outside of this, I tend to get my time nickel and dimed quite a lot, with odd things here and there,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
which makes committing to spending an hour plus going for a run not difficult, but it's got to be.
But
I've
it
got to
does. It
actually
doesn't
put
have to
effort
be an
into doing it.
hour. I think that's the thing you have to remember
Yeah,
as well. It doesn't have to be an hour.
yeah,
It can be half an hour. It doesn't have to be 5K. It can be 3K. Whatever works
you're
for
right. Yeah,
your own schedule.
yeah. So that's something I need to work on. Is finding not finding the time to do it. I have the time to do it.
Making the
Not
time to
gonna
do it.
pretend I don't. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's making it. It's making it that it's something that's important and it's something that I want to commit to doing and will commit to do. And that if something else happens, then I'll need to fit that around it rather than always being the run that fits around everything else.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
I think
every
that
runner
yeah,
comes to that junction knowing it's you have to have a life and you have commitments. But if you have a mindset to want to achieve a goal, you've got to fit it in somewhere.
yeah.
Um,
So I think that's the next point then is to set another goal for myself somehow. Find something that I'm comfortable with and that is appropriate, and then start working toward that, and then I can do more workouts and more runs, and have them planned in such a way as that, yeah, this is something that I've committed to and something that I need to do in order to get to the whatever goal I've set.
you've also got the bonus of, although we don't have a running track where we live, you are a literally 2 minute walk from the gym. So even if you didn't want to run outside, if it was too hot or it was too cold, you could go on a treadmill.
Yeah, I might be interested in taking that up later on in the year, maybe, but for now, um, Yeah, enough for now. I've not really got any
Stick
excuses
to the
other
roads.
than,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I
But
should just be able to do it.
that message about 21 days, that was on the 29th of July. So yeah, we are
Hmm.
coming up. We're about 6 days away from being a month since you ran last. So
Yep.
it could
The
be
pl-
interesting revisiting
the
that
plan
again.
is to head out in 2 days from now and just do something. I hadn't really put much thought into if I was going to do any particular pace or distance or
No.
time or anything like that. But yeah, just head out and do something
So
on
that was
Saturday.
going to really be my final sort of question to you was what's the plan going forward? Are you going to try and keep it 5Ks at steady progress to aid the weight loss, or would there be more interest to move up to 7.5K, 10K, or diversify to the odd event here or there and try see whether you catch the running bug more than it just being something that you're doing to aid weight loss and self progression? It kind of takes a more of a hobby stance rather than, as you say, sitting at a computer all day.
Yeah, it's I definitely got glimpses of enjoying it for sure. Especially after the runs, there was quite a few. The last one in particular, felt really good afterward. Um, and dare I say, maybe even on the last one, I enjoyed the actual run itself. Outside of doing it with yourself, that definitely doing it with you there made it enjoyable. But if I'm thinking about doing it on my own, then yeah. So yeah, the plan is to head out on Saturday, do something on Saturday, and find something else to work toward. Um, and I'm pretty sure that I'll enjoy that process again. Because I certainly looking back at the 8 weeks that we done together, um, I definitely enjoyed it.
So
That's the takeaway, the feeling I have from it. I definitely look back and think to myself, I really enjoyed that.
good.
Um, so yeah, I'm gonna set another goal, work toward that, and then just keep building on it. Really, just keep building on it. If that ends up doing 7.5 or 10K or beyond, then if that's what I feel like doing, then that's what I'll do. If I feel like I want to focus on doing more intervals and pushing the pace more in particular, then I'll stick to that.
Yeah, because
But
that's
yeah, I
not
think
something we didn't really look at that during any of your process. We stuck to intervals, but we didn't look at fartlek. We didn't look at tempo. We didn't look
mhm.
at speed sessions. It was just get the process done, get the basics nailed. So you
I'll
might be interested to look at that side of things.
I'll probably end up finding something that works for me. So like
Yeah.
obviously while I'm still in the process of losing the weight that I have at the moment, not that I have heaps and heaps and heaps and ungodly amounts to lose, but
No,
it
no.
it definitely has an impact on the heart rate that I can sustain and
Yeah.
things like that. So I'll probably split my focus between doing some longer runs, slower or moderate pace, and then just maybe doing some runs where I'm just focusing on the heart rate specifically, just so that I'm not spiking it too high. And at the point, it seemed to be the last few runs that we done that, like the last 5-10 minutes in particular, you could see my heart rate would just climb up higher. For most of the run, it would sit around the same level, and then like after half an hour or 35 minutes, it would just start climbing again. So, yeah, keep an eye out for things like that and just make sure that I'm not overdoing it
But
because it's,
I
yeah.
think, yeah, like you'd said though, for me, I noticed when that was happening with even without you looking at your watch because
Yep.
I would talk to you the whole time, and at the beginning you would respond, and when you were finding it tough, you would make
I would
noises.
respond less.
You would
Yeah.
respond less, and you would respond in grunts and acknowledgements, but it wouldn't be a structured sentence. And so you,
Yeah. It's not a
as a coach,
conversation as such.
that exactly. And as a coach, I kind of learned that that's when I would try and slow you down and
Mhm.
try and help you stabilize without effectively telling you, look, come on, slow down. Sometimes we had to do that, but
Yeah.
no, that's
I
good.
think I think that was useful you being there in person as well, right? Because you can if I go and do a run, um And because the heart rate was so high pretty much all the time, I could have said whatever. But with you being there in person, you can obviously you're getting the feedback from me speaking to you while we're running, and you can hear my breathing and how much I'm actually struggling, and so you can see whether or not the 8 week plan that we've been following is actually appropriate or not, right? And it
Yeah.
gives you the ability to change it, even if I'm being a bit stubborn, or if I'm maybe not being very truthful about how hard I found a run or something like that. So
But also
it
making you
was,
push that last 30 seconds where you're not pausing the watch and effectively cheating the system to go,
yeah,
well, I'll just stop for a minute and then I'll resume
yeah,
it.
I'll just get a quick breather and then finish this last 2 3 minutes out.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's yeah. I enjoyed the whole thing. It was really good, and I definitely want to do more. And I'm kind of disappointed that I haven't for the last few weeks, but there's no point in dwelling on that now. I've got a plan in mind, and I'm gonna stick with it again.
So let's say the next goal, if it's sticking with 5K, let's say the next goal then is doing your first park run. Is that fair?
Yeah, that would be fair. Yeah, see how I do with all the other people around me that I'm not necessarily with and or talking to. See if
Correct.
I
Yes.
see if I do the same thing you do and go too fast at the start.
100%. It's unfortunate that this week is it's a perfect week for you, but I won't be there.
Mm.
I've got other commitments, but it's Pacer week, and that's the
Oh, is
week
it?
that
Okay.
I wanted to do. I think it's the first week of every month is Pacer week. So even if we aimed to get you there in a fortnight's time, not this
Hmm.
Saturday, not the Saturday after, maybe the last week of the month. Actually, no, I'll be away then. I'll be at the Loch Ness 24. So even the middle of the month, we get you at the park run, we give you a taste of what it's like, and then come the first week of the month, it's Pacer week, we test you and see how you get on with an official pacer
Hmm.
running at a time that you feel that you're comfortable at.
Hmm. Might start looking at doing some of those awkward parts that we avoided as well. The uphill stretches and places and stuff like that.
we avoided them. We purposefully avoided them. Again, for the listeners, we didn't avoid hills. I did make Chris do hills. There
Yeah.
was just certain days that it wouldn't have worked in the lap or the route that we took. If I got him to go up a hill at the point he was at, he might not be here talking to us just now.
Yeah.
I had to learn a lot in a coaching respect to really learn what was happening with the person that I was running with. But it's all stuff that I'd gone through myself, and I know from a self discipline point of view, I've been there. I've stopped the watch and cheated the system and gone. I actually ran that uninterrupted. Where in reality, if you look at Garmin, look at Strava, and it says your run's 40 minutes, but you were actually only running for 30 of those minutes because it knows that you've stopped the watch for 10 minutes. You're cheating no one
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yourself, or you're
Yeah.
fooling
Pretty
no one but
much. And
yourself.
yeah,
So
and I definitely want to hit those areas can be a bit problematic in runs as well, though. Like
yeah,
those one or two hills that go from being fairly. Yeah, there might be uphill sections, but they're not that bad. But yeah, around our local area, at least, there's one or two sections that have quite steep hills in particular. And it would be good to be able to tackle those without having to try and plan an entire run around them. So
well, there we
that's
go.
something
That's
that
well,
I'd
that is
probably
that
work
is
toward.
something we can do hill sprints. So park run and
Yeah.
hill sprints, and I know for a fact Mike will be sitting there going, "Ha! You don't know hills." We do know hills, but the elevation gain, it's not. We're not talking hundreds of feet. We're
Yeah.
talking tens of feet. But we'll do hill sprints. We'll work on your heart rate, and
Yeah.
yeah, just build it up.
Yeah,
But
it would be nice to be able to pick the route based on the route you want to go rather than the geographical features of that route. Yeah.
yes, yes. I think we'll finish off, and I've got something I want to do for TJ. TJ put it to me, but I think I'll get Chris to do it. But I think I'll put it down and say that the people that I said at the beginning of the interview, Susan and Chris, it did help Chris a lot as well on a weekly basis. So when I would make a post and say how he was getting on at the end of the week, it did help him a lot having that feedback from an external source to say you've been doing so well, and actually it did give you that boost, didn't it? It gave you that
Yeah, for sure, for sure. The encouragement,
yeah, the encouragement and yeah.
It was really good. I really, it was night and day compared to the first attempt when I went to do it myself.
Yeah, spot on. Change of pace now though, and this is a Scottish pronunciation challenge. So just to finish up this interview and give a little bit of hilarity to anyone listening, I'm going to give Chris some words. I'm going to post them. Have your phone ready because it's going to come up in your Discord DMs. I'm going to post them some words, and this is the Scottish word challenge. And you say it how you were going to say it. Don't try and poshify yourself. Just say it how you would say it normally. So here's your first one.
Flowers. Toes.
So for anyone else listening, if you're hearing the keyboard going, sorry.
That one's difficult. That one's difficult, but we'll say water. I say head more than I say heed these days. Garden. Tomato. Hands. I need to say hoose for the last one.
And that's the last one there now.
Window.
There we go. Yeah. I would agree. For TJ especially, I would say flowers, toes, water, head, garden, tomato, hands, house, and window. But I know that she wants to say flowers, toes, water, head, garden, tomatoes,
I was going to say, windy. Yeah, if I was saying these things to like work colleagues or maybe even you, I would say them kind of normal. But if I was saying it to like my mum, just context, people obviously won't know my mum's from Glasgow, and so these words tend to get butchered quite badly by people from that part of the world. So yeah, if I was saying it to my mum, it would be flowers, toes, water, heat, garden, tomato, hands or horns, hoose and window.
Aye, exactly. Again, for TJ's sake, where me and Chris live now, it is said now, it has been the Michael has been taken out of us in the past. Where we live at the moment, it is said that we speak the King's English, or say the King's English, or the most easily recognizable and understandable version of Scottish. But as soon as we're down in the central belt of Scotland, it completely changes. And it's unrecognizable, some of the stuff that you would hear. Right.
Yeah. It is. You're not wrong. It is. I often, like, obviously, I've been working with a lot of companies over in the Aberdeen area recently, and that's been eye-opening as well.
That's a completely different language
people
altogether.
From the central belt are bad.
Yeah. Right. I hope that recorded that last little bit because you're right. Our internet provider just had a little bit of a wobble. So we'll end it there. And thank you very much, Chris, for coming to save the day once again. But now that you've said the commitments that you're committing to, I will hold you to it, and I'm pretty sure that anyone listening will hold you to it too.
I was going to say, if I don't know, you get to parade me on this again.
I do until you get it drummed into you.
And it could just be snide comments here and there while you're speaking to other people. It could just be like, unlike my pal Chris.
Passive aggressive audio files I'll send to you, snippets from each podcast.
Sounds like a plan.
Spot on. On to my guest for episode 6. His success in winning our giveaway at the end of season 1 paved the way for the disappointment of so many of you. But now you get to hear from the man himself as we talk about not only how he felt learning about his success in winning the Loch Ness 24 entry and accompanying prize package, but also given his openness and honesty on the topic that I'm trying to share throughout the season. It is, of course, the giant amongst us mere mortals, the bird whispering, magpie supporter himself, Al Hager, better known as Person Al Best. We'll cover as much as we can during our interview this Sunday, from mental health, running, exciting new adventures, and, of course, Colin the Swan. But if you have any questions you'd like me to put to Al, feel free to drop them into my DMs. As always, you can get in contact with me through the usual avenues. My Instagram handle is Mr_Steve_runs, or alternatively, the podcast handle is at thepoint99podcast. You can also drop me an email at thepoint99podcast@gmail.com. Get me on Facebook at facebook.com/thepoint99podcast, or by joining our Discord community and conversing with me in person. Information on how to join that community is in the podcast's Instagram story highlights. But until episode 6 rolls around on Friday the 11th with Al, I hope, as always, you stay safe, enjoy your runs, and you'll hear from me soon.